Hello YouTube, in this redgamingtech.com video we're going to be taking a look at the Ouya, which is a console which proposes itself to be an open source Android system. It was doing the rounds on Kickstarter now, where the people basically who are trying to develop it asked for $1 million US. In case you're not sure how Kickstarter works, I'll briefly explain it to you. It basically works as in you have an idea for a game or something similar, and you really have a passion for it, but you know what, you're just lacking the capital. It's that simple. And so you estimate the amount it will cost you to finish and complete that project and get it up into the arms of, consumers, and you basically put that price tag on, and if people like the idea enough, they'll go ahead and donate money to you. It's that simple, and then you can put out your project for the world. It's quite simple, and it's how a lot of indie games now are getting started. Anyway, the gaming industry has been around, obviously, now for a long ass time. I don't need to explain that to anyone. However, the dominance of Sony, Nintendo, and of course Microsoft are pretty much indisputable. It's, they've got a cast iron grip on it. Now, you can argue all day long who the better manufacturers of the consoles and which games you prefer, and not every generation one console might win after the other, but the point being that there is kind of a stranglehold on the market. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't want to come across as I hate any of the consoles, because I don't. I own all three and I love all three, and predominantly I'm also a PC gamer, as you guys know, who regularly tune into the channels. But news of this console is fairly simple. It's basically a designer and creator wants to make an Android backbone, so in other words, it'll be using the Android operating system, and they want it to look nice and pretty, so similar to the Wii in that respect, with lightweight and looks good. And also, it's only going to be retailing for, wait for it, $99. That's right, so about $100, and you'll have yourself a console where the games will be free to play for the most part. It will also be a free development kit, so anyone who wants to develop on the system. They even plan to encourage hacking. So, in other words, if you want to open that sucker up and you want to figure out if you can overclock it or improve upon it, then you go right ahead and you do that. There's going to be no being banned for opening up the console. Now, that's going to be a bit curious of how piracy is going to work, because some games manufacturers, such as Musings, who are of course responsible for producing games such as, well, you might have heard of it, Minecraft, are planning to possibly contribute to the system. They're at least seeming quite, what's the word I'm looking for, open to the idea. The console's developers are saying that smartphones and tablets are getting all the new titles, and they are what's hot, in quotations, and the console market is pushing developers away, and they are basically saying that the creativity of titles now is taking a hit, and I can somewhat agree on that. I'll get into my own thoughts later on, but And anyway, moving on, they said that the prices should be coming down of their stuff, and basically they want to bring the creativity into things. They also say that the console is going to be a the controller is going to be a love letter to console gaming. It has everything you've learned to love: fast buttons, triggers, laser precise analog sticks, which of course some games really love, and a good D-pad, which in certain games of course is still really required. And there's also a touchpad for games who are making the trek from mobile or tablet to your TV. Now, of course, that's quite important. If, for example, they were to port, I don't know, say Angry Birds over, then it would be pretty damn awesome if it could still have the touch functionality. This basically means that people who are developing games for the Android platform, such as, well, the absolutely massive plethora of games that we'll actually be able to have on here. Now, it's not quite sure how they're going to make real large amounts of money. One of the ways, of course, is, and I'm talking to developers, they could obviously charge over the Android marketplace, and also they could release free-to-play games, which would be pretty much adopting the advert mentality. In other words, you can have the free version of Angry Birds, of course, and there are, well, adverts pretty much all over the screen at some points, and of course you are almost inherently going to click on it. Now, I personally don't really play Angry Birds, but there are, of course, similar games, and of course, if you want, say, power-ups or whatever, then, you know, you can go ahead and pay for those. Either way, no matter which way you look at it, I think it's quite an interesting idea. It also, of course, will support microtransactions and so on, but the idea is to actually bring new developers into the whole foray of games development. So, in other words, they want to wrangle, if you will, the control from people such as EA, Microsoft, Activision, Sony, and various other big, you know, well-known brands, and they instead want to put it on the hands of perhaps you and I. So, in other words, you know, if you and your friend Tommy have a great idea for a game, well, you go right ahead and you can maybe put something together and you can maybe see it on the Android marketplace, and, you know, potentially you could make yourself a hit. This is, of course, similar to how it used to be back in the 80s and to a lesser extent the 90s, where a lot of bedroom programmers used to be around and putting together really awesome ideas for games. And, you know, a lot of really big development studios were put together because of this. It's as simple as that. You know, some of the really big ones now started off as small bedroom developers, and they, you know, they got some backing behind them because their games did really well. And, well, you have your companies now. Obviously, some of them have fallen along the wayside, unfortunately. You've got companies such as Bullfrog, not that they've been around, not they were around, shall I say, you know, since the beginning or anything, but, you know, you've had those who produce really incredible, innovative games, and unfortunately, they've just got bought out by Electronic Arts. And I don't hate EA. I know some people absolutely despise them, but I'm not one of those people. But I do dislike the fact that they've not continued games such as, well, let's go with Dungeon Keeper, Magic Carpet. I've spouted on about those games previously in the channel, and I do absolutely adore those titles. Excuse me, guys, just getting a drink. Now, if we can bring a birth to more of those games, then I'm all for it. However, I do not want to sound like I'm coming down on the side of, you know, the small guy, the little guy, and, you know, screw the, you know, corporations. So that's not what I'm saying at all. I personally would not want it to, you know, replace the Xbox 360 or 720 or, you know, my expensive gaming system. I think it would just be a nice springboard for new developers to pop up and maybe drag some innovation back in. I'm just hoping that the ideas will maybe kind of kickstart, if you will, if you excuse the pun, some ideas with Microsoft and so on. Maybe they'll help open up their consoles. I don't necessarily know if it will. I think they're probably a bit too stuck in their ways for that. But maybe, depending upon the success of these guys, and who knows, maybe it'll bring about some other consoles. Bear in mind, back in the 70s and 80s in particular, there were a lot of consoles out, and this goes, of course, for home systems as well. Back in the day, there wasn't just, a Windows and Linux and, say, Apple. There were a lot of systems, and of course some of them were basic, and by basic I mean, you know, the operating system basic. I'm not talking about basic as in they were simple, even though they were. But, you know, there were a lot of systems about. Of course, there were some really big ones, such as, say, the Spectrum and the CPC 464, and of course the Commodore 64. But there were also, you know, lesser known titles, and the same thing definitely goes for, well, consoles back then. There were a lot of consoles that was being released, and to be fair, a lot of them fallen by the wayside. They just weren't popular, they died. And of course there were a lot more consoles being released from each manufacturer. I'm not going to bother to go into it too in depth in this video, because I could make this video extremely long, and I just wanted to release a quickie, so to speak. But Is it me or is anything I'm saying kind of dirty at this point? Anyway, that's not the point. Where was I? Oh yes. What I was basically saying is that there were so many consoles being made from, you know, manufacturers, and of course back in the day there was, you know, the Mega Drive 1 and Mega Drive 2, which were origins of course of the same console, and a couple of versions of the Master System and various other systems, but there were also a lot of Atari systems that were released, such as the 7600, I think the 5000 series, the 2600 series, and I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting, you know, one or two as well, but you know, all of them were released at, you know, over a certain period of time, but certainly nowhere near the life of the consoles now, you know, where you get an Xbox 360 and, you know, that thing's going to last you 6-7 years. They're released over a lot shorter lifespans. Generally, obviously there were exceptions before anyone says anything, but back then the industry used to move a lot faster. Now, things are a bit slower, and particularly in the innovation series. You know, back then a little company would spring up, release a game, maybe get gobbled up by a bigger player, or maybe, you know, that game was really big and did really well, and they would become a big player themselves, or they would just, you know, sink into oblivion. I know I'm rambling a little bit in this video, you'll have to excuse that. Just the idea of it just kind of intrigues me a little bit. It very much could be a good shot in the arm for the gaming industry, which I don't feel is exactly stagnating per se, which some people might accuse it of being stagnant. I still think there is some really great games. You could argue that Mass Effect doesn't do anything particularly unique, but I think it tells the story in a very good way. Some of Blizzard's games, same thing. I think there's still innovation there. There is still innovation in the gaming industry. It's just sometimes you have to look for it a little bit. And under the Call of Duties, which I'm not ragging on before anyone comments, I don't, you know, hate Modern Warfare or Call of Duty or any of those titles. I know some people, you know, have a hatred for them because they feel they represent very copy and paste kind of releases. But you know, I still think they're great games, and that to me is much more important than a concept being completely new. There is, of course, always going to be innovation, which you can generally look towards smaller studios. Amnesia, for example, was incredibly popular. If you guys haven't checked out Amnesia, which I'm pretty sure most of you have by now, or at least seen how it runs, then, you know, I encourage you to do so. And the idea is that you're so helpless, yet it works really well. So we'll have to see games such as Limbo as well. Another, of course, indie game, very, very well done. The graphics style, you could almost be put off for a moment if you're expecting vibrant 3D graphics. Instead, you're presented with this almost chalk-like effect. It's 2D, but looks very beautiful. I'd heavily encourage you to check out Limbo if you've not. I think we've got a video on that on the channel. I'm not 100% though. We've done so many videos, it's really hard to keep track. Anyway, guys, I'm possibly going over the beaten path. I will be keeping up to date with this, however. Not just from a technical perspective, which of course our channel really does pride itself in, but also for the fact that it really helps me remember a lot of my childhood. And bear in mind, I was really young when a lot of these consoles were released. I was exceptionally young even when the Master System was released, but I still owned a lot of the old consoles as legacy things that my parents just kind of got me here and there. So anyway, if you guys would be so kind, comment, let me know your thoughts. What would you actually want on this system? Obviously, we're going to be seeing, you know, Android Marketplace games, but what are your actual hopes of what it does to the gaming industry? Or maybe you're not keen on this. Maybe you're more thinking, you know what? I don't dislike the idea per se, but I don't really want, you know, another competitor. I think, you know, the current ones are fine, and that's all. I just wish, you know, the current guys would, as in EA, would, you know, pull their finger out a bit more. Maybe you just like the games how they are now. So just let me know below. And obviously, if you head on over to redgamingtech.com, there will be articles on this as and when we hear things, and also you can check out forums and so on. So anyway, this was just a little bit of thoughts and ramblings by myself. So take care of yourselves, guys, and bye for now.